Hello everyone and welcome to another Premier Pundits podcast. It's Friday and I'm going to preview all 10 fixtures ahead of game week 2. Now the kicker, I'm going to try and do that within a 10-minute period. That's 60 seconds per fixture. And to make sure that I try and stick within those timelines, I've even got my phone here with the stopwatch on as well. For those that normally watch me and Jason through the YouTube channel, you'll know that I find it very difficult to keep my mouth shut. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we have some success with Bitesize. Ben, I'll cover some of the main talking points, obviously injury related, and some of those key issues that may have cropped up during Thursday and Friday's press conferences. So, ready to get us underway, and I'll just start the stopwatch now, and let's give this a go. So yeah, Liverpool take Burnley in the early kickoff on Saturday. The big talking points from Anfield and Jurgen Klopp is that Thiago Alcantara and Jordan Henderson played in a behind closed doors game this week, and they're in much better position to be involved. However, Jurgen Klopp was very coy on whether those two would actually make the matchday squad. That could potentially be impacted by the availability of Fabinho. Now, unfortunately, we just found out that the Brazilian midfielder has lost his father, and there's question marks on whether he will be available or not. Again, Klopp referenced that as a private matter, and he wouldn't go into any further details. Elsewhere, Curtis Jones is available after suffering from concussion. For Burnley, not much change down at the Turf Moor. Dale Stephens and Kevin Long are those only two players who are out long-term. Sean Dyche won't give any kind of time frame on their possible return. At Villa Park, my boys go down on to take Aston Villa, and it's good news for Steve Bruce because Ollie Watkins hasn't recovered from a whack to the knee that he took in pre-season. Dean Smith isn't happy with the progress that's being made, and he won't be risked this week, and there's an outside chance that he may not return before the international break. The Villains are also without Bertrand Traore, who tweaked his hamstring in game week 1. That looks to be minor, but again, it's going to be game week 4 before he's back in action. Douglas Luiz did return to the training pitches on Monday after winning gold for Brazil, but there was no mention of him during Friday's pre-match press conference. At Newcastle, lots going on there. Jamal Lascelles, he's hoping to be involved after watching his side 4-2 defeat the West Ham from the sidelines. It was a surprising decision given that Kraft was included in the back three alongside Kieran Clark and also Federico Fernandez, as he isn't a centre-half. But Steve Bruce indicated that Lascelles was still recovering and wasn't up to full fitness following COVID and an injury that happened towards the end of last season. So fingers crossed with that one. Joe Willock will, however, the new signing, will be in the matchday squad as we look to, and he hopefully, if he scores in his 8th consecutive game for Newcastle, he will break Alan Shearer's long-standing goal-scoring record. In midfield, John Joe Shelby tweaked his calf. Now, that's the other calf, a different calf to the one that hampered him in pre-season. So possibly Isaac Hayden could come in there. And Freddie Woodman looks locked in at that Newcastle goalkeeping role for at least the foreseeable future, with Martin Dubravka suffering a setback. His surgery on his foot is now infected, and also Carl Darlow, who is struggling with long COVID. Across the Crystal Palace and Selhurst Park, Patrick Vieira said that everybody was fine and the squad was fully fit. Not necessarily true. He didn't include those long-term absentees, Eze Ferguson and also Michael Olise, who is about maybe 2 or 3 weeks away from a possible return. Luka Milivojevic, he's out through personal reasons, and also James Tompkins' calf only returned to the training pitches this week. However, visitors Brentford more or less got a clean bill of health. They should have the same squad that faced Arsenal. Christophe Azur looks to have recovered from a minor foot/ankle issue, and also he had a touch of cramp that forced him off in the opener, but they're fine and the bees should be unchanged. Leeds United, the big question marks and the big players for Marcelo Bielsa will be whether Calvin Phillips starts in midfield, and also whether Firpo is ready and available to start on left back. Again, and I say this is big because we know the influence of Calvin Phillips in that Leeds squad. But also, if Firpo plays at left back, then that frees up Stuart Dallas to probably play in a more advanced role. But both players have trained really well, and it's looking good at Goodison Park for Rafa. Now, he spoke on Friday. Again, wasn't willing to provide much of an update on those players who are currently self-isolating. But what he did say was Moise Keane was one of those players that would return to action. The only other name that he checked was James Rodriguez. Now, he is out, hasn't trained this week, hoping to be back on the training pitches from next week. And of course, his loan agreement, a decision on whether he remains at Goodison Park, will be taken before the end of August. So again, that's one to watch. Manchester City, we had lots of talk about Ilkay Gundogan and the shoulder injury that he suffered late on against Tottenham. However, question marks over his availability relate to an ankle problem that he picked up in training, and Pep referenced that as a little disturbance. Now, my own initial thoughts prior to that news was that Kevin De Bruyne could potentially come in anyway, with Gundogan not being risked. However, De Bruyne hasn't trained on Friday as well. And his surprise return to the squad last weekend maybe helped exacerbate an ankle issue that he's been carrying since the Euros. And again, I don't think Kevin De Bruyne will be risked in that team. John Stones, Kyle Walker, Gabriel Jesus are all players that could come in again after missing out in game week 1. In Norwich City, Daniel Fogger, uphill task. You know, they've got a terrible start to the season, some horrendous fixtures, obviously coming off the back of a 3-0 defeat to Liverpool. Their pre-season was heavily disrupted by COVID, but things seem to be getting a lot better down the Carrow Road. They only have one confirmed and definite injury absentee, and that's Sam Byron. He hasn't played since the hamstring injury that he picked up the last time Norwich were in the Premier League. So we're talking maybe a good 18, 19 months with regards to that. And he doesn't seem to be any closer to return to that first team squad. But there are also question marks over the likes of Onel Hernandez, who's training post-COVID, be it a fitness call. Also, Plancheta. He was another COVID issue, and it looks like he's probably going to miss out. Kristen Zimmerman missed sessions earlier in the week, but that wasn't COVID related. I believe that's just illness, so that gives him a chance. And also, I'll have to look for this one, it's Omar Belly Dali. Apologies if I butchered that name, but he was suffering from tonsillitis last week that kept him out of game week 1. And hopefully he's trained, so there's a good chance of him being involved in the squad. Now across to the Amex and Graham Potter. Unfortunately, Joe Veltman is ruled out of Saturday's game, also along with Danny Welbeck, Dan Burn, and also Tariq Lamptey. However, Aaron Conley does return to the Seagull squad after what Graham Potter described as personal issues that have now been resolved. For Watford, only one real sort of change from the opening weekend in terms of a potential starting 11, and that is Kuka, who has a minor thigh problem. Now, again, if the decision's taken for him to not be risked, then somebody like Dan Gosling could come into that team. Josh King, and a few questions with regards to Kiko Femina in his absence from the squad have been addressed. Both players have trained and are available. The latter wasn't risked after going under the knife and had groin surgery in the summer, so that was the reason why he was omitted from the matchday squad last weekend. At Southampton, down at St Mary's, who entertained Manchester United. Ralph Hassan, no major problems there. Will Smallbone, the only long-term absentee with an ACL injury. James Ward-Prowse came through that opening game despite missing a large chunk of pre-season with a knee problem. He looks to be fine. And also Livramento, who appeared to be limping towards the end of the game at Goodison Park. They've been given a clean bill of health. Now, United might need a little bit of help with this one because it's fairly extensive. Rafael Varane, Edison Cavani have both trained all this weekend. Ollie was very coy in terms of which players would be available. He said, you will find out on Sunday when the players are boarding the flight down to Southampton. So that remains to be seen. But what we do know, Jess Lingard played in a behind closed doors game on Tuesday against Burnley and scored. Phil Jones also played in that game, but unlikely to return to that matchday squad. Of course, he's coming off the back of a really sort of long-term injury. Elsewhere, we know that Alex Telles and Marcus Rashford are the two confirmed absentees. And there's also good news with regards to Dean Henderson. He's been suffering from long COVID, and he should be back in and around the squad probably after the international break following a return to light training. Wolverhampton Wanderers, Bruno Lage wasn't giving anything away in terms of injury updates. He said he wasn't prepared to do anything until he spoke to the medical department, which of course came after today's press conference. So therefore, there's no confirmation on the extent of Pedro Neto's setback. Media reports, Tim Spires from The Athletic indicates that he may not be back until 2022, possibly February at the earliest. But we wait, and like I say, we remain open and cautiously optimistic that maybe is a worst case scenario. Lodge did say that Wolves have been training with only 15 professional players this week, which suggests that the squad is a little bit threadbare and stretched at the moment. We do know that with the likes of Willy Bolly, hamstring is currently out, and of course long-term absentee Johnny ACL, and also Daniel Presents, who had groin surgery in the summer. He's probably looking at game week 4, hopefully for a potential return. Now, the visit as its former boss, Nuno Espirito Santo, and of course, Harry Kane is the main talking point. Nothing really new and to shed in the light of this. He didn't travel with Tottenham to Portugal for their Europa Conference tie. He remained at Hotspur away to undergo further training, and Nuno said he will make a decision after the final session on Saturday. So it's a day-by-day decision. Elsewhere, Christian Romero, who did play in Portugal, looked as if he took a knock to the knee. Hopefully that's not the case. Nuno referenced that it may be fatigue, but players were still being evaluated at the time of that media briefing. And also Carter Vickers looks to have suffered quite a nasty ankle injury out there in Portugal. For Arsenal, the two big main talking points surround COVID victims Alexander Lacazette and Aubameyang. The latter certainly is in a better position. He returned to the training pitches on Thursday, where Lacazette described by Arteta as being in a bad way, and he hadn't trained at the time of Friday's press conference. Now, Arteta wouldn't give any kind of definitive answer whether either would be available. Again, evaluations and assessments would take place on Friday and Saturday. But like I say, if anybody has a chance of making it, that's probably going to be Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Visitors, London rivals, Chelsea, Thomas Tuchel. He talked about Romelu Lukaku, who has been training with the squad since Tuesday. He talked about the heavy load and how he's come through that, how they would take an easy day on Friday and then make that decision on his involvement on Saturday. The decision isn't whether Lukaku is going to be in the squad. The decision will come down to if he feels that Lukaku is in a position to start. My own personal opinion is that he will. He's going to be a huge player for Chelsea this season. And for me, he really is the cherry on the cake. And they could take Chelsea to that next level, almost akin to maybe a Harry Kane arriving at City. I think he could have that much of a difference. We know that Chelsea underperformed their XG last season, and Timo Werner was one of the main culprits. So Lukaku should address that and really take them forward. And N'Golo Kante has also trained after an ankle problem. And there was also good news with regards to Hakim Ziyech, returned ahead of schedule after picking up a shoulder injury in the Super Cup. And once disappointing admission will be Christian Pulisic. Now he's come out and he's confirmed that he tested positive for COVID-19. He is double jabbed. He is asymptomatic. So there's nothing there certainly to worry about as it currently stands, other than the fact that he needs to self-isolate and he can't be a part of the squad. And finally, West Ham United, they entertain Leicester. West Ham, nothing more than a few minor knocks and niggles, bumps and bruises from the win on Tyneside. Everybody came through that first game absolutely fine. In visitors, Leicester City, Brendan Rodgers talked about how fantastic James Maddison has been in training this week. He took a knock in the lower back. last weekend in the win over Wolves. Timothy Castagna is also available and could come into that Leicester backline. And he also mentioned the likes of Yannick Vestergaard. Now, he said that Vestergaard wasn't up to speed in terms of his sharpness and fitness. So to me, that gives a little bit of an indication that he won't be messing on, certainly with that central pairing with Daniel Amartey expected to sit in alongside Kaglar Sayunshu. A quick word on Johnny Evans. He is nowhere near as it currently stands. The injury isn't progressing as hoped. There was some talk or suggestion that he could come back after the international break, but at the moment, that's more speculation than anything else. There's certainly nothing definitive. And that's one that will be monitored on a daily basis. So hopefully, I'm going to check the clock. We are looking at, I've not done it, so Jason's not going to be happy with the Everton, but we've done it in 14 minutes. So that's good for me. Next time, I'm going to try and get it down to 10. But for now, that's your 10 game preview ahead of round 2. I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to add your comments in the box below, any suggestions, and keep your eyes and ears peeled for more great content that will be coming out over the course of the season. We've got the YI captaincies, we've got our Dream Team 11, we've got our fantasy podcast with Dr. Raj and Jason, and plus loads of great guests coming up. So I appreciate everybody watching, listening, learning, and joining us on this adventure. It's great for you to be a part of it. And hopefully, we will see you again very soon.